We are hours away from a deadline in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is the Maryland father who was deported to his native El Salvador. Yesterday, a federal judge slammed the Trump administration. She said they acted in, quote, bad faith by not providing information about why they deported him. And she wants those details by tonight. Still, Trump-appointed border czar Tom Homan spoke about the case earlier and doubled down on the deportation. Take a listen.
Bad faith. We removed an MS-13 gang member, public safety threat, wife beater, designated terrorist from the United States. He's home. He's a citizen of El Salvador, a native El Salvador, who had due process, despite what you're hearing, been ordered removed by two separate immigration judges. The best that could happen for him if he actually gave back to the United States, he would be detained and removed again.
Okay, let's bring in CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen. Jake, we just heard that pushback there from Homan. Can you give us some more context as to why the judge overseeing Abrego Garcia's case? What did she say and why is she asking for this deadline?
Well, that's right. So we know, Mugo, that today was the deadline before last night's development for depositions to be completed in this case. There are about 4 people from the government who the plaintiffs in this case and the judge said have enough firsthand knowledge of what has been going on behind the scenes to potentially return Mr. Abrego Garcia back to the United States. She wanted those depositions complete. However, last night, the attorneys for Mr. Abrego Garcia said in a court filing that they're dissatisfied and that there was nothing of substance in what the government had done in answering specific questions from them. These depositions obviously hadn't all happened, but they did say that what the government had submitted so far was insufficient. From there, the judge wrote back, issuing a scathing order, basically saying that not only has the government not complied, but their excuses, like the excuses that they've put in the docket and argued in court so far, are basically non-starters for her. That any kind of claims that they're making, that there's government privilege over some of this information or why they can't answer certain questions, should have been sorted out earlier, not kind of behind the scenes in this discovery process. There's a deadline by 6 o'clock tonight for the government to answer some of the clarifications that the judge wants, but also to answer some of her questions. And I would interestingly point out that last night's status report and what the government was doing to return him was actually filed in camera, which means in private with the judge, potentially signaling either a change or something that the government does not want the public to have access to, filed with just the judge in this case. So certainly more to come on this and why specifically that was the case.
Oh, yeah, definitely more to come out for sure. We'll see what happens later tonight at 6. I want to pivot to a different case here, and that is what happened today in the hearing of Mohsen Madawi. He is the Columbia University student who was arrested during his citizenship interview. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, that's right. This was a hearing up in Vermont. Again, another situation where, as the Trump administration is attempting to detain and then deport people who are here on student visas for their either pro-Palestine stance or outspoken stance against America in the context of the Israel-Gaza war. He had a hearing today and was requested in person, so he was there. And we know that the judge heard arguments from his attorneys to free him from detention and have his case remain where it is in Vermont. The government, on the other hand, has been moving for this case to be dropped so that they can do whatever they would like with Mr. Madawi, whether that's to continue to detain him or potentially move to deport him back to another country.
Let's talk about another case, 2 more cases here, because there's several at this point, and that's the immigration case for Columbia graduate Mahmoud Khalil and Tufts University graduate student Rumesa Ozturk. A Democratic congressional delegation that visited the 2 in Louisiana ICE detention facilities just yesterday. So here's what they had to say. We'll talk to you on the other side.
We met today with Mahmoud Khalil. We just met with Rumesa Ozturk. Both of them are right now being imprisoned here in Louisiana. They are not being charged with a crime. There is no evidence that could convict them of a crime. ICE just feels, through the Trump administration, that they have a right to take people from across our country and to put them into facilities like this here in Louisiana.
So, Jake, do we know what these members of Congress talked about during that meeting with Khalil and Ozturk yesterday? And then what are the next steps here in those cases?
Well, we know that there was certainly discussion, and it was a pretty big congressional delegation, about a half dozen or so members, in addition to Senator Markey, who you heard there. They're being detained in different places, but we did see this delegation go down and meet with both of them in Louisiana. It's certainly interesting kind of in the context of where we're at, where there are dual front cases where there's immigration judge proceedings and there are civil court proceedings in which these people have sued for their release. In the case of Mahmoud Khalil, we saw that last week, 8 days ago, there was a decision by an immigration judge to allow him to remain in custody, and he said that because Marco Rubio had submitted a declaration saying that they believe that he was a threat to America for his speech positions in favor of the Palestinian people in Gaza, that he was not going to free him. And Mr. Khalil's attorneys in civil court have been saying that they're going to file more evidence as to why he should be released and why there is a real defense for his detainment being wrong and that there needs to be some kind of movement. We saw his wife did have the baby that they were expecting also, and ICE, despite a plea from his attorneys, did not let him attend or parole him basically out of detention to go be with his wife at that moment. And we know in the case of Ms. Ozturk that a judge last week decided that she could have her case heard in Vermont, just like what we saw with the other student we just talked about. And in addition to that, she has had her case and has not been able to be freed from detention by an immigration judge yet in this case, but there's a stronger argument in this case where a judge is asking for more evidence from the government as to what grounds they officially have for her to remain in custody, because at least on terms of her, there's at least a weaker set of evidence that the government has not yet produced as to why she would need to be deported and is a threat, in the government's words, to remaining in America and continuing to study here.
Yeah, especially considering the fact that all she did was she wrote an article, basically. All right, Jake Rosen,
yeah,
thank you so much.
And I would just point out that didn't even mention Hamas, right?
Right, exactly. Jake Rosen, thank you so much for following all those cases for us. We appreciate it.